and it's getting worse. I think we'll see unprecedented amounts of violence in the 2022, 2023 years.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. I'm your host, Joe Emilio. On Friday, the 25th of February, Cyril Ramaphosa finally fired General Sitole. And here to chat about that is Ian Cameron from Action Society. He will also be giving us some updates on what Action Society is up to today. Hello, Ian. It's great to have you back again. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Once again, thanks again for giving up some of your time to join me on the show. Some big news happened last week as we're filming this. This is Monday, the 28th of February. But last week on the 25th of February, I believe, the General Sitole was fired. Cyril actually pulled the trigger on that one, pun intended. So yeah, I just wanted to get Action Society's thoughts. You guys have been campaigning to get Sitole fired as well as Bekele. So yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think it's obviously we're grateful for the fact that he's been sacked, but it's also quite important that we look at it realistically. I think let's start with some of the reasons why. Sitole has been implicated in several corruption cases. He's been criminally charged twice by IPID, the Independent Police Investigatory Directorate. And so the list continues. There are many other scandals that he's been linked to, including the fact that the firearm permit system has been switched off. The PCAN system, which is the forensic exhibit system, has also been switched off due to non-payment. And so the list goes on. And I think if we were to do a national firearm audit now, we would be shocked to see that the largest majority of firearms ever lost or stolen by or in the South African Police Service would most likely be under the leadership of Lieutenant General Kekla Sitole. So is that enough to fire him? Yes. But is it enough to save the police? No. I think from an Action Society side, Bekele needs to go. Is that enough? No, still not. We need a complete restructuring of SAPS management. We need a complete management audit done to determine who is appointed according to skill and merit and not because of political affiliation.
Great stuff. Ian, I've been wanting to ask you this, and for those who are watching this, I will have Ian on the show in March. I'll leave a link in the description for that. We're going to do a nice 1 hour. He's going to be one of my guests. We'll chat to him for an hour on a lot of these topics. But very quickly, you mentioned yourself, it's not enough to get the general fired. It's not enough to get Bekele fired. There's a whole plan that you guys have put forward. But I don't know, man. Do you really think SAPS is savable at this stage? Shouldn't we just completely scrap it and start from the ground up? Or is that something that's also kind of impossible to do?
Unfortunately, at the moment, they still play too big a role, in my opinion, at least in general law enforcement. It would mean a complete destruction of the let's say, the broad law enforcement system in South Africa. Is it savable? I tend to be more on the pessimistic side, and I don't think SAPS will ever fully recover nationally. I'm a very strong believer in the devolution of the police. I support the thoughts of people like Premier Alan Winde in the Western Cape to say that we need devolution of SAPS. I think it's also important on a provincial level that people get what they vote for, because it's quite unfair that people that don't vote for the ANC are forced to work with law enforcement that is empowered by the ANC, or empowered supposedly. We all know that law enforcement under ANC rule is totally unsuccessful, and I think they want it that way because otherwise they would be caught out. So nevertheless, I don't think it's completely savable. I think there are matters that we can influence policy on and better certain parts of service delivery, and I think it's important that we do that. But it is part of, let's call it a three-pronged strategy. The first one is, let's see how we can use civil rights organizations, the public, etc., to pressure them into doing things right. Secondly, we need to look at devolution. And thirdly, in my opinion, the most important one, how can we empower communities to be more involved in law enforcement and to make sure they are responsible for their own safety?
Yeah, you bring up a very good point there at the end about the communities, because I was going to ask you, seeing as maybe, okay, completely getting rid of SAPS and rebuilding it from the ground up isn't an option, but like you say, maybe a type of federalism or, where each province is in charge of their own law enforcement, what would be what advice could you give to someone watching right now to perhaps fix the situation that they're in? SAPS in many areas of South Africa, as you know, is dismal, absolutely dismal. So what can civilians do to kind of protect themselves and maybe help in some way?
So I would encourage civilians to get involved in neighborhood watch structures, etc. But I would also like to encourage them to take note of what's happening in a place like Ukraine. And this isn't about choosing sides. It's simple that when you've got a populace that is completely disarmed and marginalized by government and by the supposed ruling authority, then you don't have people that can stand up. And I think it's a very important lesson. Well, we can even look at South Africa. Last year, how many South Africans took up arms without, let's rather say, they took up arms within the framework of the law to defend their community against criminal looters. And I think that they did that very successfully. And I think if it weren't for them, we would have seen far more anarchy in the country during that looting spree that we saw in July of 2021. So in broad terms, I think get involved in your community safety structure. If you're not armed yet, get armed, get trained, and be ready. And I say this with the utmost consideration for not only legislation, but also for a rather risk-free environment. And I must say it as a disclaimer that the majority of lawfully armed citizens in South Africa are responsible lawfully armed citizens in South Africa. So they are not the problem. And I think it's crucial that that community is boosted and grown and encouraged to develop further in the future.
Ian, seeing as I have you here, I wanted to ask you, any updates with the DNA backlog?
According to me, we saw a bit of an update that it's supposedly around 100,000 cases left. It's a bit less according to some sources in the police. My challenge is, and again, people might say I'm just looking for ways to criticize. Maybe I am, I don't know anymore. But my challenge is I think that it is a ring-fenced amount, and I don't think they're considering the constant influx of samples that are being entered into the system as we speak. It's quite different to say we had a 300,000 case backlog and now it's less than 100,000, and we have success, but they didn't take into consideration new cases that came in the time being. So no solid feedback at the moment. I see organizations like DNA for Africa are very positive about the developments. So I know they are absolute experts in their field, and I would like to obviously respect that, and I honestly hope that we do see some kind of recovery, but I'm very carefully optimistic.
All right, so there has been a bit of progress with the DNA backlog, which obviously is good, but just like you, I'm also cautiously optimistic. Who knows if there's another pile just growing on the side while they focus on the DNA backlog. Only time will tell, I guess. So Stats SA released some criminal stats not too long ago. If I'm not mistaken, it was about 2 weeks ago. Do you have any comments on the stats that they released?
I think we've got a bigger crisis than what we think. I think if we look at people like Sitole, they've got blood on their hands. I think the ANC has blood on its hands. And it's getting worse. I think we'll see unprecedented amounts of violence in the 2022, 2023 years. And I think it will be on the increase probably for the next decade, if not longer. There's no way that law enforcement has the capacity or the competence to really push back. Obviously, we saw what happened in Rosettenville, and I obviously applaud those cops that did fantastic work. I think it's incredible, especially at this day and age in South Africa. But I think it's like a needle in a haystack. It's a very small drop in the ocean. And I don't think we realize how many of those syndicates operate in South Africa. So it's going to take quite a while. As we said earlier, there's a lot of other avenues that we need to consider to try and solve the law enforcement challenge that we see in the country.
All right, Ian. Well, that's all the time we have for. Thank you so much for joining me and coming on to the show. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I will have Ian Cameron from Action Society South Africa to join me as a guest for an hour. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below, and we'll definitely answer those when he's on the show. We got lots to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. So Ian, if there's anything you want to say in closing, please, now's your chance.
No, just thank you very much, and want to encourage people to get involved and join the Action Society.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of which, Action Society, their website is linked in the description below. Please go check them out and check out their campaigns as well. Support them. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Leave a comment down below. Let me know, what do you think about the firing of General Sitole? This is your second reminder to please subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to also like and share this with someone who you think might find it valuable. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.